Last week, I came to you with this huge story about a massive number of sexual assaults in Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve, reportedly perpetrated by men believed to be of North African and Middle Eastern descent and also followers of the Islamic faith. Now, there were two stories within that original story. Story number one was the alleged cover up of their background being North African, Middle Eastern, and of the Muslim faith. Part two of that story was this code of conduct that was proposed by the mayor of Cologne for women, which led to people reacting and saying that sounds like victim blaming. This sounds like the focus is merely on women rather than the perpetrators. The focus is not on all of the things it should be on. That story was last week. In the week since, Lewis, we have now seen a number of stories break, similar stories from other countries, and I'll tell you about some of those. And this is very, very disturbing. To begin with, Hamburg, Germany. In Hamburg, Germany, let's not even start in Hamburg. I'll start in Frankfurt. 7 women in Frankfurt, Germany, reported being sexually assaulted by men, reportedly of North African origin with, quote, strong Arabic accents. In Hamburg, Germany, 39 women have reportedly been sexually assaulted on New Year's Eve. We have more reports from Germany, from the cities of Berlin and Stuttgart and Dusseldorf, but we also have reports from other countries altogether. Indeed, we have reports from Switzerland, and we have reports from Finland, etc. But before I even get to those, let's look at some of the specifics of the reports in Germany. The reports from Berlin mirror those from other cities in terms of the apparent Middle Eastern or North African origin of the alleged perpetrators, and indeed an Iraqi and a Pakistani man have been arrested and reportedly came to the New Year's Eve events from a refugee camp. In Dusseldorf, we had 11 such incidents, and 2 in Stuttgart. All incidents involved perpetrators identified as North African, Middle Eastern, speaking Arabic, Arabic accents, etc. Now going to Helsinki, Finland. Police in Helsinki are reporting an unusually high level of sexual harassment reports from New Year's Eve. And they said they were tipped off to this because they heard that groups of asylum seekers and refugees were planning to harass women on New Year's Eve. And then we also know, Lewis, from the beautiful city of Zurich, Switzerland, that 6 women reported being sexually molested and robbed on New Year's Eve, with an additional 24 reports of theft alone, also reportedly happening, quote, in a crowd of multiple men with dark-colored skin. Of course, having dark skin does not prove anything about your descent or your religion, but that is what we heard from the reports there. And then lastly, going from Switzerland to Salzburg, Austria, police in Austria say they're investigating, quote, a number of complaints of sexual assault on New Year's Eve. 3 men already arrested. Lastly, if we go from the large cities we are now done with, this is not just in large cities. In a smaller Swedish town named Kalmar, at least 9 women have reported sexual assault on New Year's Eve. The alleged perpetrators in Sweden did not speak or understand Swedish. So reports from various countries, Lewis, talk about the possibility that refugees or asylum seekers could be deported if found guilty of sexual assault or theft. Without question, at this point, they should be deported if they are found guilty of that at a time when they are seeking refugee status. Do you not think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just don't understand the mentality of someone who is seeking refuge, is seeking asylum, and then decides to go out and do something like this. Is it because they feel that, have they been, I don't know, do they feel like they've been mistreated? Do they feel like there's some injustice happening and this is some type of rebellious act? Or is this just a bunch of pigs acting like idiots?
This is really shaking up the left, including for some of the reasons Lewis mentions. The right knows how to respond. We don't agree with the response from the right, Lewis, but the response from the right is Muslims are bad, get them out, stop refugees, stop asylum, stop the whole thing. The left is more unsure, right? Do we ignore their background or do we talk about their background? Do we ignore or not or not ignore that they're refugees or seeking asylum? How do we critique this? Majid Nawaz wrote an article in the Daily Beast about this, and I think he is absolutely spot on. Let's take a look at what he had to say, Lewis. He said, yes, it is racist to suspect that all brown men who look like me are rapists. It is bigoted to presume that all Muslim men who share my faith advocate religiously justified rape. It is xenophobic to assume that all male refugees are sexual predators awaiting their chance to rape. But let me be absolutely clear. What will feed this racism, bigotry, and xenophobia even more is deliberately failing to report the facts as they stand. Doing so only encourages the populist right's rallying cry against, quote, the establishment. If liberals do not address such issues swiftly with complete candor and courage, the far right and anti-Muslim populist groups will get there first. They have been doing so for a while now. Read the entire article by Majid. We are linking to it from our YouTube page. Absolutely spot on, Lewis. The left has to take this head on without skipping key details.
That's what we're trying to do.
Right.
And immediately after posting our first video in response to the Cologne stuff, it was just comment after comment about how this is happening in other places, multiple comments about how this type of thing has been happening in Sweden for quite some time.
Right.
And huge issue. You know, what good does it do the world to just deny that this is happening?
Now, some regressives have come out and done and said things that make absolutely no sense. After the attacks in Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve, we talked about how it was a very widespread in terms of media coverage, that the background of the men was not mentioned. And then we started seeing all sorts of strange comments come out. Now, our friend Dave Rubin from Rubin Report over on Aura TV, he found a few instances of sort of very regressive comments, and I want to outline them for you here. At the top of the list is one we already covered, which is that the mayor of Cologne, Germany, had this code of conduct released, which was mostly focused on what the women should be doing, what the victims should be doing. And while we talked about this, Lewis, there's a difference between sort of practical advice about how to be cautious and bordering on victim blaming. And we already talked about how many of the elements of that code of conduct made no sense. Like, for example, keep strangers at arm's length away from you in crowds in public, right? Some elements of that made absolutely no sense. Dave talked about that. We talked about that. But there are other examples that Dave Rubin pointed out in a really great article. He pointed to a tweet, Lewis, from self-described feminist Lori Penny, presumably a progressive, I don't really know. She tweeted something out truly reminiscent of the right. She said, quote, so bored of racists who only pretend to care about women's rights when they see an opportunity to bash Muslims. This is straight out of the right-wing playbook, almost alluding to sort of concern trolling, because you can criticize Muslims by reporting the story. This is akin to when right-wingers say, oh, the left is racist for seeing racism. This is the left saying someone claiming to care about women's rights is racist because the perpetrators appear to be Muslim. This is absolutely regressive, and we have to watch out for stuff like this, Lewis. This is not good. This is exactly what Majid Nawaz is saying we should not be doing.
Yeah, you know, the right is always accusing us of making everything about race, right? In this case, you know, I don't know if this is about race technically, right?
Right, absolutely.
I mean, so I don't know. You just have someone here who's very afraid of appearing to be an Islamophobe. Maybe someone who hasn't even really looked into what has happened here and is just kind of throwing this stuff out there for everyone to see anyway.
And a third example, which Dave Rubin points out, is straight up conspiracy theory material. This comes to us from Frances Coppola, who's a writer at Forbes, according to her Forbes profile page. She threw out an absolutely baseless conspiracy theory where she said, I bet they did. I suspect anti-immigration people of organizing the Cologne sex crimes. Fastest way of getting borders closed. This is, again, reminiscent of right-wing false flag conspiracy theories. The idea that, no, the reports are wrong. What we have here, Lewis, is a completely unproven hypothesis that it's actually people who want to stop immigration who coordinated these attacks to make it appear as though migrants, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers are guilty of rape so that we shut down the border. Baseless claim. I mean, no evidence whatsoever.
Yes, the claim is that in multiple cities in Germany
Right.
and other countries on New Year's Eve, somehow they all coordinated, and people were raping, robbing, and sexually assaulting their own citizens and neighbors in an attempt to close borders. No, I don't think that's what happened.
Absolutely baseless, and great job by Dave Rubin staying on top of this stuff, as we will. Okay, I have a hilarious update about the domestic terrorist armed group of people. I mean, I hate to even call it a militia because that actually makes it sound more legit than what it is. Last week, I told you about this armed domestic terrorist so-called militia led by Ammon Bundy, the son of Cliven Bundy, the Nevada rancher. And they had asked for snacks to be sent since they clearly hadn't really planned ahead. And things are getting completely nuts. First of all, we're in the second week of this occupation. There's no sign whatsoever that this occupation is going to be ending anytime soon. Now, another heavily armed group of individuals showed up at the wildlife refuge where this building is occupied, presumably, Lewis, to provide security for the occupying militia. So you have one occupying so-called militia that is taking over a building. They apparently are in some kind of danger, so a second militia has shown up to provide security for them. That militia is part of the Pacific Patriots Network. This is all completely nuts. I mean, these names are ludicrous. The idea of this is everything that's going on is ludicrous.
Yes, I think the strangest part is that they are kind of occupying a building. I mean, whatever they're doing, it's pretty much irrelevant. I mean, the people who need to operate out of this building are now operating somewhere else.
Right.
Life continues.
Yes.
And now you just have a bunch of these militiamen sitting in a building,
With no snacks.
starving themselves. They have no snacks. and they're accomplishing absolutely nothing.
Right.
So, I mean, there is no point in trying to take over the building or getting into some type of armed conflict. Just let them sit there.
Absolutely. And it's not clear. We now have a list. So the Ammon Bundy militia has named itself the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. We have a list of demands now. This is one of the best things that we've had on the show in months, okay? We have a list of demands that are presumably from the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom, although it's not clear whether the PPN, the other group that's there, the Pacific Patriots Network, whether they were involved in the creation of this list of demands. Here are just some of the demands on their list, the stuff that they're asking for, okay? They're asking for both Miracle Whip and mayonnaise. You'll notice mayonnaise is misspelled. Miracle Whip and mayonnaise? How do you need both Miracle Whip and mayonnaise? I thought that they were essentially the same thing. Apparently, they have a need for both of those. They want brats, okay? Brats, German sausages. They want any canned foods as well as hay. And then I love this, just thrown in the middle of all this, they want money. They want, if you can send them some supplies, send them some money. Why they need money in the middle of nowhere in this federal building, I have absolutely no idea. They need laundry detergent as well as boxer briefs. That's an interesting combination of items. We could read a lot into that, Lewis. They also want, and this, I assume they mean aprons. They've misspelled it. They want 4-inch aprons. I did a Google search for aprons, A-P-R-A-N-S. Nothing came up. I assume it's a misspelling of aprons. They need gaming supplies. I don't know if tabletop gaming or they're more into Magic the Gathering the way Lewis is, or what types of games they're looking for. They want gaming supplies. Maybe that refers to game hunting, like hunting. I don't know. Okay. They also want tampons. I didn't think there were any women involved here. So, I mean, I would love an explanation as to why they need tampons. 3 different types of cigarettes, as well as chewing tobacco they need. Lewis, what do you make of this? This is very, very odd, an odd list of demands, and a sort of pathetic list as well. If you're this occupying force taking over to fight the tyranny of the government, it's not very self-sufficient to be asking people to send tampons. It doesn't really project strength, does it?
Yeah, I I don't know. I guess not. I think I just would like to point out that I
Please.
believe the difference between Miracle Whip and regular mayo is that Miracle Whip might have some sugar added to it.
So it's like
I
turning
don't know.
mayonnaise into candy.
I could be wrong, but anyway, do they already have bread? Do they have cheese? Do they have the meat? Are they going to make like brat sandwiches with mayo?
They wanted other stuff too. I mean,
Yeah,
this is only
okay.
a selection from the list, so maybe bread was also on the list. This is turning into a joke. It always has been a joke, but it's not that funny because we're talking about an armed group that has taken over a federal building. And
It's kind of funny.
It's funny in the sense that they think this is a political action of any kind of meaning. But beyond that, it's quite disturbing that armed people are being allowed to, for a second week now, take over a federal building.
I think we should not send them any games and only send them the Miracle Whip or the regular mayo,
Right.
but not both.
Don't send them both. Make them choose, right? I mean, they should be suffering a little bit. It's either Miracle Whip or mayo. It's not both. There was a news story brought to my attention about a bullet hole found at Bernie Sanders' campaign headquarters in Las Vegas, Nevada, on a day that Bernie Sanders was actually at that particular campaign headquarters. I thought, wow, huge story. Clearly, this will be reported everywhere, but no, it was only reported, and it continues to essentially be only reported by the Las Vegas Sun. Nobody else has really picked up on the story. So I assumed then, again, wrong to assume, it must not be true, because surely corporate media would be interested in a story where a bullet hole is found at the campaign headquarters of one of the two leading Democratic presidential candidates. No, it doesn't appear to be, because it is untrue. The Las Vegas Sun writes that a bullet hole was indeed discovered in a storefront window at the Bernie Sanders campaign headquarters in Northwest Las Vegas over the weekend or late last week. This is the same day that Bernie Sanders was on site, according to Metro Police. So officers responded just before noon to the campaign office on South Rainbow Boulevard and said it appears as though a bullet went through the window. They declined to comment on whether a shot had been fired. I guess conceivable, Lewis, that somebody threw the bullet through the window.
Is that actually a possibility?
I don't know.
So nobody heard a shot.
Right. I guess what they mean is there's two possibilities, right? Either this is a bullet hole that has been here for a while and it's not linked to any action that recently happened, or somebody recently shot a bullet through the window.
And that would have happened presumably when no one was there, because otherwise there would have been a scene.
And Bernie Sanders did several interviews with a number of media outlets at the office that same day, including with the Las Vegas Sun. And then just a couple days ago, the Sanders campaign, or yesterday, in fact, called the bullet, quote, an issue of serious concern, but they did not elaborate on the specifics of the situation. Why is this not being more widely reported? I mean, if there was a bullet hole found at Trump campaign headquarters in New Hampshire, corporate media would absolutely be all over that. Why is this not a story? Because it's Bernie.
I don't know. I think that maybe it's just not a story because there's not much in terms of sensationalism here. I mean, nobody heard the shot.
Right.
Nobody saw anything. Who knows how long it's been there? Maybe it is kind of dull. I mean, I think it's still worth reporting on, though.
Do you think it's likely that if the bullet hole was noticed, don't you think it's likely that at some point during the entire time Bernie has had a headquarters in Las Vegas, somebody would have already noticed it? So this idea that the bullet hole may have been there for months already, maybe even before they moved in. It sounds hard to believe to me.
That does seem unlikely. At the same time, there's a lot of stuff like this that happens in Las Vegas, right? I mean, there's a lot of violence, a lot of gun violence.
Stray bullets?
Stray bullets, sure. I don't know how many stray bullets there are on any given day. But is this out of the ordinary for Las Vegas?
That I don't know. But certainly it's out of the ordinary for a presidential campaign. And it's even more bizarre that it has received essentially no media coverage on corporate media, full stop. Last week, we talked about Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's first ad. His first TV ad, it focused on immigration. It was crazy. We'll review it now. Remember the moment during which they are talking about immigrants coming over from the southern border of the United States. But on video, they actually show video of Moroccan immigrants. Let's take a look at this, just to remind you.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
The politicians can pretend it's something else, but Donald Trump calls it radical Islamic terrorism. That's why he's calling for a temporary shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until we can figure out what's going on. He'll quickly cut the head off ISIS and take their oil. And he'll stop illegal immigration by building a wall on our southern border that Mexico will pay for.
Yeah.
We will make America great again.
Yeah. So the crazy thing was, as I told you, he presents video of the Moroccan border while talking about uncontrolled, undocumented, illegal immigration from Mexico. It's stupid and it's crazy and it's inaccurate. Fine. But I had the opportunity, the privilege, I would call it, to watch Ted Cruz's first ad on immigration, and it eclipses Donald Trump's ad on immigration. It is far more insane. Let's take a look and listen to the Ted Cruz immigration ad now.
I understand that when the mainstream media covers immigration, it doesn't often see it as an economic issue. But I can tell you it is a very personal economic issue.
Right, my dad came.
And I will say the politics of it would be very, very different if a bunch of lawyers or bankers were crossing the Rio Grande. Or if a bunch of people with journalism degrees were coming over and driving down the wages in the press. Then we would see stories about the economic calamity that is befalling our nation. If I'm elected president, we will triple the Border Patrol. We will build a wall that works. We will secure the border.
Yeah. The ad
I'm
looks
Ted
like
Cruz,
a pair. Oh,
I
I'm
approve
stepped
this
all over.
message.
He does approve this message. I talked over him saying that. The ad looks like a pair. I mean, it looks like a satirical ad. There are men and women in suits running across what is presumably the river between the U.S. and Mexico. And what he's saying is just wrong. When he says, if people of high skill were coming over here and taking our jobs, look at the number of people coming from non-Spanish speaking countries being hired for high degree, whatever, white collar jobs, whatever. They're coming from all over the place. We've talked about how we're falling behind in science and math and so many other things, in part because of the educational policies that people like Ted Cruz promote. That is happening. And no, people still are only focused on supposed Mexican immigration. He's just wrong on every level here, Lewis.
Well, is he being deliberately misleading, or does he not know what he's talking about, or are they just picking an issue or generalizing because it resonates with his base?
I have no idea. It's again, is it ignorance or is it being dishonest? I don't know. And think about Ted Cruz's own story. Ted Cruz's dad migrated to the U.S. from Cuba. Republicans, by and large, were supporters of the Cuban embargo, and if it were up to them, Rafael Cruz would never have come to the United States in the first place.
Yeah, I'll say this though. This ad has great production value,
Right.
and it's like watching a little movie. It's fantastic.
Let's say that he does deport all undocumented immigrants as he's proposing. Are the companies that employ them suddenly going to go and hire Americans at minimum wage, on the record, paying taxes? Maybe Ted Cruz would like to believe that that's going to happen, but I would ask him what planet he's living on if that's what he believes. Of course they're not going to do that. Go after the employers, hit them with heavy fines and possible jail time, and watch as the desire to come to the U.S. illegally to work subsides. And we're going to be talking about this and debunking. We've got a great video we're working on right now. Lewis was doing some work on it this morning. It's going to be similar to our Reza Aslan clip, but it is going to look at the talking points on undocumented immigration. We're going to blow this nonsense out of the water, Lewis, because it's just garbage.
We will. And I think he is resonating with people, though. And you know what would resonate with me would be if Donald Trump and other candidates, instead of talking about, they're taking our jobs, how about the jobs that the manufacturing jobs and other jobs that we send to Mexico?
Absolutely.
How many of those would we have if we just brought that all back here? And what would that do for the economy? I think that's a bit more important.
Fantasy world that Cruz and Trump and all of them are living in, and we're going to expose it in the next few weeks. All right, we have big news. I don't know if you saw this morning. We have new polling now from the Democratic primary, and things are really, really changing quickly if you believe the polls, and not everybody does. Let's look first at two new national polls, Lewis. First and foremost, we have the CBS New York Times poll, which has nationally Hillary Clinton 48, Bernie Sanders 41. The IBD TIPP poll has Bernie Sanders 39, Hillary Clinton 42, and currently the Real Clear Politics average of all recent polls nationally has Hillary Clinton up over Bernie Sanders by only about 8.5 points. This is the closest they have been in a long time Do you buy this? What does this mean?
It means that as we get closer and more, and his campaign gets in full stride, more people are getting to know Bernie Sanders. Those polls that showed her with 40-point leads in the summer, and then just last month she had a 20-point lead, they're almost irrelevant at this point. So as we get closer, the competition is going to get thicker.
Let's now look for people who say, I don't care about national polls, I care about state polls because we're voting state by state. Let's take a look at that, Lewis. First, here from Iowa, we have a new Quinnipiac poll. Hillary Clinton 44, Bernie Sanders 49. We have a new PPP poll. Hillary Clinton 46, Bernie Sanders 40. And we have a new ARG poll. Hillary Clinton 44, Bernie Sanders 47. Let's just look at an average, though, because that's what matters. The Real Clear Politics average of recent polls has basically a dead heat. Clinton 45.5, Sanders 45.3. Looking at New Hampshire now, after Iowa, which is the second primary. In New Hampshire, we have a number of polls, all other than the PPP poll, which is widely considered a sort of Democratic establishment poll, all have Bernie Sanders ahead by 14 points in a Monmouth poll, by 3 points in an ARG poll, by 13 in a Fox News poll, and on average, Bernie Sanders is ahead of Hillary Clinton by about 6 points in New Hampshire. The path for Bernie, which is admittedly a difficult path, is if he can get Iowa out of the way with about 50% of the delegates and have a strong showing in New Hampshire. If in New Hampshire he gets 50 to 55% of the delegates, maybe that pushes him closer in Nevada, where we don't have recent numbers. The most recent poll is from December. He seems to have been down about 20 points. This is what he has to do. Will he do it? I don't know.
You know, honestly, I think he will, because in New Hampshire, he has a 2-to-1 lead margin amongst voters 45 and under. He's leading in every demographic in New Hampshire. So he's going to perform well. Like we said with the older polls from last month, they're almost irrelevant. So we have no idea what's happening in Nevada or South Carolina, for that matter. I'd be very interested in seeing some updated polling on that.
And, you know, as I talked about this earlier in the week, if he does well in New Hampshire and Iowa, maybe the 20-point deficit that he had, at least last month, in Nevada shrinks to 8 to 10 points. Now, after 3 states, he still has about 42% of the delegates. Maybe that pushes him closer in South Carolina. South Carolina is the first real test because we have the heaviest of the first 4 states of a non-white electorate, and he was down something like 50 points to Hillary Clinton. That is going to be the real test, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on what may happen there.
I think when he's putting a concerted effort into black colleges and black churches and really hitting the ground hard, trying to unlock the minority vote, particularly the African-American vote, away from Hillary Clinton.
Why has he not been able to do that sooner? Is it a name recognition thing where everybody knows about Hillary Clinton? Or is there something in particular going on with Bernie and the black community?
I mean, if you want the real answer is that the black Democratic establishment is solidly with Hillary Clinton. They are just as problematic in the race for someone who's an outsider as anyone else. So he's not fighting against Hillary Clinton as much as he's fighting against the black Democratic establishment, which is why I put so much emphasis on groups like Black Lives Matter. If they really wanted to mobilize their political capital, then they need to shake loose that grip that the black Democratic establishment has on voters.
So, and I don't want to misunderstand what you're saying. The black Democratic establishment, you see them as working together with Black Lives Matter in a way that's hurting Bernie, or you see Black Lives Matter working to help Bernie in a way that the black Democratic establishment is not?
Exactly, the latter. So absolutely, the establishment is in lockstep with Hillary Clinton. Matter of fact, the black Democratic establishment went against President Obama originally in 2008. So they are in love with Hillary Clinton. They have been with Hillary Clinton, and they want to maintain the potential for power that Hillary Clinton provides. So they are working against Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders particularly needs a grassroots African-American movement to release the black community from the stranglehold that the black Democratic establishment has by virtue of Hillary Clinton.
And I'm curious, initially, the biggest headlines in terms of protesting candidates that Black Lives Matter got was for protesting Bernie Sanders. Did that end up helping him in some way?
Oh yeah, I said that a long time ago back at Netroots Nation, that this is going to help Bernie Sanders because, one, it honed his message on minority issues, black issues, and then two, he was tried by fire, right? It was an opportunity, not Seattle, putting the shenanigans in Seattle aside.
Disaster there, right? Yeah.
Netroots Nation was poignant and useful, and I think he capitalized on it, and I think he has shown dramatic improvement because of it. Seattle disaster should never have happened. Hillary Clinton has not had that moment. No matter how much people in the media are trying to say she has not. And I think he has a resonance now with the black community, with grassroots black community, with people around Black Lives Matter, if not the official organization, right? They probably would never
that it exists,
that it exists, right? But the people who identify with it are more readily going to identify with Bernie Sanders than Hillary Clinton any day. And his best route is to connect with them and shake loose everyone from the black Democratic establishment. That's what he's fighting against. That's why he was like 40 points down in South Carolina.
Well, that will be the first real test on this issue for Bernie Sanders in South Carolina. We'll continue following it. For now, we will take a break and we will speak to medical ethicist Arthur Kaplan next. All right, I've got some video I want to discuss. Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate, was at the Red Arrow Diner in Manchester, New Hampshire. He was having a sandwich. Reports vary as to what particular type of sandwich it was, but I'm going to cut to some video of him there, and we're going to talk about this. You can hear someone yell, "Enjoy the sandwich, you racist," and then they interview the woman who yelled that. And I think everybody's going to get a sense that there's something a little bit particular, a little bit unusual going on here, and we're going to talk about that. Let's take a look.
New Hampshire One just came out with a...
When I was leaving, I shouted, "Enjoy your burger, racist. I love New Hampshire," because I wanted to make sure that people remembered that he is racist, that he's using it to rally voters, and whether he believes it or not, it's working. And I do love New Hampshire. I wanted people to know that I was not just being antagonistic. Really, that I will have been the person who did my part to voice what I had to say. If I was silent in there, then I would just be agreeing with him tacitly.
All right, so she feels like she did her part. What I really want to get to here, we don't have to discuss the specifics of that. Here's what I really want to get to, and this is a conversation I've been having with many people. Racism now has become a word that in and of itself is used in many different ways by different people. So the right has taken, and I talked about this with Dave Rubin yesterday on his program, the right has taken to, if anybody claims to see racism, the right says, "You're racist for making it about race."
Right.
Absolutely crazy to me.
Right.
Okay. There are some on the left who use the term racism, I believe unfairly, to stop certain conversations that maybe we should be having. So I'm concerned about whether the term racism now has become in and of itself a sort of diffuser or conversation stopper for everybody.
Yeah, it has. I think it's an overly simplistic word.
Right.
I think it makes a complex situation very binary, and we don't have any room to actually make progress, nor is it capable of really describing what's going on. Calling Donald Trump a racist really doesn't unpack all of the different problems that are going on with Donald Trump.
And sometimes people say, well, okay, what exactly is racism? Not a dictionary definition, but if we say, what are we really talking about when we say racism? What somebody might say, I'm not racist because I don't think less of people based on their race, right? That could be one way of looking at it. So then we say, well, if you're a politician and you propose policies that disproportionately negatively affect members of a particular race or religion or ethnicity or whatever, is the individual racist in the beliefs they personally hold about members of a race? Well, not necessarily. We don't really know. But the impact of their policies would be bad for members of a particular race. So is racism the right term there? I don't know. Maybe we need a new term.
We clearly need a new term because it's been co-opted by the right. They want to call anyone who talks about race at all. Matter of fact, they'll call us race baiting as just for having this conversation.
Right.
So there needs to be a new word, but I think not only a single word, but we need to fully unpack what it is that is happening, particularly with Donald Trump, with these policies. Are they individually a racist? I really don't care. Are their policies going to have a disproportionate effect on a particular race? I absolutely care.
We could imagine a scenario where a candidate, doesn't even matter who, right? Joe Smith, the candidate, he is at home and he really thinks that Asian people are just really bad people by virtue of being Asian. But as a matter of policy, he says, I'm not going to pass a policy that punishes Asians just because I don't like them. That's probably a racist, right? But in terms of the policies that they're going to propose, they're not necessarily going to have a racial impact. And I think maybe we should distinguish between the two. I'm not cheerleading for the guy who thinks less of people because they're Asian, though. Let me be clear.
Okay, so you've opened up a can of worms for me, particularly because of Donald Sterling. I did not care whatsoever that he was a racist bigot in his home. I have to remember this is radio. In his home, what I care about were the policies and the housing discrimination that he was involved in years before. And we get stuck on people's character and what they say and words that have no meaning and pay very little attention to the policies that are detrimental.
Very, very interesting. Lewis, I want you to chime in on this before we move on. What is your determination of the use of the word racism at this point in time?
That's tough because, well, I mean, you would think that no matter what, it comes down to what someone's personal beliefs are about people that are different from them.
That is racism.
And I think that I like to say that everybody's a little bit racist, right? I like to say that. But I think where it comes out much of the time, especially with politicians, it's in our actions. And, you could be, I would say, friendly with someone your whole life and never hear them say anything that would tip you off. They could still have these feelings and these sentiments, and I guess you have to
Your
to spot
focus
it.
would be on actions.
You have to spot it in their actions, I guess.
Even by the absurd standards of extremist Islam, I have a shocking story for you. An Isil militant has publicly executed his own mother after accusing her of apostasy. In other words, leaving the religion of Islam. This is 20-year-old Ali Sakr al-Qassem, who reportedly shot his mother Lena in the head with an assault rifle in front of what is described as a large crowd. It was originally reported that the mother was in her 40s. The activist group Raqqa is being slaughtered silently, reported that she was 35. We don't exactly know. When I first heard this, Lewis, I said, this cannot be a real story. Let's see. I'm sure it's only being reported by one media outlet, but indeed not. This being widely reported by any number of credible media outlets. Lena al-Qassem understood to have been accused of apostasy. And now normally apostasy is leaving the religion formally. When you throw in ISIS, ISIS has had a sort of looser definition of apostasy, which means anyone who speaks out against or doesn't support ISIS. This is grim stuff.
Yeah, I guess still pretty shocking. I'm sure this has happened before, but this is the first time we've heard about it. It's incredible that either this guy really believes that his mother deserves to die because of her comments about Islam, or he's so afraid of repercussions from the ISIS state that he felt he needed to take matters into his own hands and do this to make it seem like, I don't know, like he is against her wholeheartedly.
Well, the UK-based Conflict Monitor said that Ali Sakr al-Qassem had reported his mother to his ISIS superiors, who then sentenced her to death and ordered him to be the one to kill her. It's not known why he was the one who had to kill her, but we know the execution took place outside Raqqa's post office because that is where Miss al-Qassem had worked. We often get to this, right? Is this extremism or is it mental illness? And I don't know. Is it indoctrination? Is it, as Lewis suggested, fear of repercussions? There are many people who, even by fear of death, would not kill their own mother, though. We have to ask the question, is this mental illness? And to be honest, I don't know the answer anymore.
It's sometimes very difficult to tell the difference between mental illness and someone who has been completely indoctrinated.
And you can step back and say, okay, put aside the threat from ISIS to this guy, put aside everything. Can anyone who is willing to and capable of murdering their own mother for sort of imaginary infractions be a sane person? Many people would say no. Doesn't matter what other circumstances you have. That is not someone who is of sound mind.
Well, maybe. I think over the years we've had some people on the show and we've done stories on people who, if they were raised in normal ways, would probably be perfectly functioning normal people, members of society. But when you are indoctrinated, and who knows what age it starts at with some of these guys, I can't say for sure it's mental illness, but we can certainly say that they are gone. They are long gone.